Thank you so much to the Walrus Talks for inviting me to speak to this topic, and I'm grateful for a number of reasons. First of all, as you can see, I'm not exactly young anymore, uh, and being in this crowd makes me feel younger. So I doubly appreciate the opportunity. And it's so incredibly inspiring to hear from the grassroots work of Michelle and Justin and others, and the reflections of Dr. Lawford. So I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to talk about structural change, which will change the systems around the way people access funding, in this particular case, young people access funding, because legislative change is now my bread and butter. It is not as exciting as the work that Justine described or Michelle described, but it is system shifting in that it doesn't change the possibilities of one group or one individual, but changes the possibilities for everyone. So I'm from Toronto. It's a word that originates from a Mohawk word, which is Takaranto, meaning the place in the water where the trees are standing. That is where I live, and it's quite a beautiful way of describing where I live. I know that the title of this talk is Funding Change, but I'm going to ask for forgiveness if I talk about finding change instead, because that's kind of what I do. And I'm going to describe a particular initiative that led to systemic legislative change and overhaul as in my role as a senator, and particularly in my interest in the work of charities and not-for-profits. I have never ever worked in none of my jobs have been in the private sector. I have always worked in the charitable, not-for-profit, or academic sector, and I believe very firmly that that is one of the reasons I was appointed as a senator. And during my discovery of the legislation that governs charities and not-for-profits, I found that grassroots movements, not-for-profit organizations, small groups like Justin's organization or Michelle's organization are uniquely disadvantaged from accessing charitable dollars because they are not registered charities themselves, even if their work, as described, is in the public good. So as per the law, which is the income tax law, charities are not able to partner with informal grassroots movements or not-for-profit organizations and give them charitable grants because they are not charities. Instead, what they have to do, and I'm pretty sure this is what IT Global did, is they find a workaround, which is onerous. It is a legal fiction, and it is enough of a scare for many foundations and charitable organizations to choose to step away from working with youth organizations that are grassroots led. So let me just give you an example. The YMCA, which is a big youth organization, which is charitable, which raises millions of charitable dollars every year, can use their charitable dollars to run their own youth programs, which they do. But if they want to work with an indigenous organization, let's say on a reserve, and that's not a charity, but an informal not-for-profit or even just a movement, the only way they can do that is through a very complicated legal agreement, which effectively puts the YMCA in charge of the charity. This law is called the Direction and Control Law. Now, I just ask you all, the income tax law is complex code, but imagine what those two words, direction and control, mean to indigenous organizations and racially and organizations led by Black individuals or racial minorities. The situation becomes far more complex when you're dealing with international development organizations, because charities like, Plan Canada are located in Canada, and they have to work with grassroots groups overseas. And the only way they can do that is with exercising this direction and control. And no wonder then that this law has been perceived in Canada and outside Canada as colonial and patronizing. And its implications are severe. The evidence tells me that less than 1% of Canada's charitable dollars go to Indigenous organizations. Less than 1% of Canada's charitable dollars, I'm talking about $8 billion a year, goes to Black-led organizations. So the work that is needed the most has the least charitable participation. So this is the context that I kind of stumbled into. So it's not easy, colleagues, to change the Income Tax Act. But in the last government, after 3 years of work, and I don't want to gloss over the hard work and the many knocks that I took, but the support of the charitable sector was incredible. And last year in the budget, Minister Freeland agreed to the change. So as of now, the implications are being worked out, the guidelines are being worked out, and as of very soon, charities like the YMCA will be able to work with Indigenous grassroots or Black-led youth movements without exercising this so-called legal fiction. So, there's a structural change that will change the way everything works. There are other structural changes that are required in Canada. One of them that I'm working on is youth voting, lowering the voting age. I'm sure Michelle will be interested in this, from 18 to 16. That's not going very well, but legislation is like this. It takes a long time. And before I close, I want to cast the eyes and ears of our audience to what young people overseas are doing, particularly in Iran. That revolution that is now in the making is led by young women. It is led by young people. And what we can do in Canada is provide support to the young people of Canada by confiscating sanctioned assets held in Canada and returning them back to the victims, in this case, the young people. So I will stop here. Happy to take any questions.